Hi there. Most likely this year, you'll have spoken to family, friends, and colleagues remotely via the internet. That is how we've been able to make this podcast. Therefore, it's very likely that you've experienced those amazing audio special effects like compression, lag, and my personal favourite, sounding like a robot. So don't you worry, we've worked very hard and managed to achieve those exact same special effects on this podcast at times, so that we remain on brand with most people's 2020. I hope you enjoy the show.
This is the Lockdown Hotline Sessions with your host, Danielle Lonnon.
Sorry, please answer that.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Lockdown Hotline Sessions with me, your host, Danielle Lonnon. This is the podcast where we put identical questions to all of our guests, but they mix it up, spice it up, and entertain us with their unique take on COVID and lockdown in 2020. Today's guest is Luisa Lyons. Luisa is an actor, writer, and musician who grew up in Sydney, studied in London, and now lives and works in the New York area. After training at NIDA and ATYP and receiving a BA in English and History at the University of New South Wales, Luisa completed an MA in Music Theatre at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. She has performed in plays and musicals in Australia, the UK, and the US. Favourite roles include Ariel in The Tempest, Gladys in The Pyjama Game, Nurse/Blair in Sunday in the Park with George, and Stuart/Elf in The Polar Express. After overcoming acute myeloid leukemia, Luisa wrote and performed a one-woman show about her experience, the Big C Cabaret, and also ran her 5th marathon on the 5th anniversary of her life-saving stem cell transplant. Luisa is the creator of Filmed Live Musicals, a site dedicated to cataloguing stage musicals that have been legally filmed and publicly distributed. Luisa Lyons, hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me today.
I'm so excited. Now, as you know, we ask identical questions to all of our guests. So this is your beginner's call. Are you ready?
I am ready. Bring it on.
Fantastic. Okay, so can you tell us a little bit more about yourself that perhaps wasn't covered in your introduction?
Sure. I grew up in Australia, in Sydney, and I moved to London 9 years ago to study musical theatre at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. And on my way to London, I stopped in the US to work at summer camp, which I had done a few years running, and it was, I wanted to go back. And while I was at summer camp, I met my now husband, Aaron. But when we met, I said to him, this is strictly a summer fling. I'm not interested in a long-term, long-distance relationship. And just yesterday, we just celebrated our 7th wedding anniversary.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. So we were long distance for 2 years, and then I moved to the US after a very lengthy immigration process. We lived in Fort Collins for a little bit in Colorado.
Wow.
And then we moved to New York. And now we're actually in New Jersey, but in the New York area.
Okie dokie. Wow, that sounds like an exciting journey. We should write a musical about that.
It was, I can't believe it's been less than 10 years since I left Australia because it's been a lifetime in between.
No, absolutely. 10 years is a long time. So I'm going to ask you question number 2, which I think you've just answered, but still you can elaborate. What is your current location and what is the state of lockdown there?
So I'm in New Jersey in a little town called Carteret. It's right across the water from Staten Island. And we are very fortunate in our town that it's very suburbia, but it's not very densely populated.
Okay.
And so we're able to, go out for walks, and we won't meet many people. Sometimes we can go out and not see anybody else.
Wow.
So I feel very, very, very lucky that we have that space and we have a yard, and, it's safe for us to go out. The trouble is that the rates of coronavirus are extremely high, and they're just skyrocketing. It's really strange watching like my Facebook feed and the news from Australia compared to the US. It feels like an alternate universe because the numbers are just catastrophic here. I mean, I think Jersey has reached, I think like in the last week it was 300,000 cases.
Wow.
And, I look at the Australian news and it's like, one case, the entire state locks down. It's like, lol.
Yeah.
It's, and there's people don't wear masks. It's hard. It's because, my husband and I have been home pretty much since lockdown happened. We moved house during that time, but we don't go out. We don't go to parties. We don't socialize with our friends, and then you watch people having these huge parties and weddings, and it's like people are dying, and it's hard.
Yeah,
we're in a very fortunate situation, but mentally it's very difficult.
Yeah, okay. I understand that. I really do. Thank you for sharing that with us. So, are you still in the same location as pre-COVID, i.e. in early March? And are you still doing the same thing? And when I mean, are you still doing the same thing? If you worked in hospitality, are you still working in hospitality? That kind of thing.
Okay. So at the beginning of March, I was working as an usher on Broadway. I was working at the St. James where Frozen was playing.
Oh my God, amazing.
And I miss it. And lockdown happened and they closed down Broadway. And my husband and I were living in an apartment in Carteret. We had moved here. My husband teaches philosophy at Rutgers University, so it was closer for him to travel. And lockdown happened, and thankfully his school went entirely online, and I was out of a job. And I was able to go on unemployment, which is a whole thing in itself. Very complicated, terrible bureaucratic system. And in the midst of all this, we were in the middle of buying a house.
Oh, wow.
And it was our first time buying a house, and it was very stressful. And we actually got rejected for a loan the first time we applied because I'm an actor, and that didn't look good on the application. It took me off the application, and we were able to reapply, and we found a house we loved. And I thought, when we missed out on the loan, I thought, oh, well, that house is not meant to be. We won't get it. But I think COVID kind of worked in our favor because there was this pause where people, I think, stopped looking for a little bit, and no one else put in an offer on the house. And when our loan got approved, we were able to move in. So at the beginning of May, we moved into our house, which was daunting, moving during a pandemic. It was very nerve-wracking, but our moving people were wonderful, and we moved ourselves the things that we use every day so that they wouldn't touch, things that we needed. And everything else was just in boxes that we unpacked, a few days later, and it felt very safe.
So it was actually meant to be in the end.
Yes. And I feel so, I said it before, I just feel so lucky that we have had a beautiful yard. We had a hammock out the back there, and, we had green space and space to kind of spread out during all of this. We've each got our own office and lovely kitchen. I feel very, 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 very lucky that we've had this space during all of this, and time to set it up too, because pre-COVID, I was commuting 7 days a week into the city.
Wow.
And because New Jersey transit is the worst, my commute was, I cannot express my hatred for it enough. It's expensive, it's dirty, it's unreliable. So my commute, we're only about 40K from the city, from New York. So it's not far distance-wise.
No.
But my commute, it's one bus door to door from Carteret direct to Manhattan. And my commute was anywhere from an hour to 3 hours, and I didn't know which one it was going to be because the buses wouldn't show up. The bus would break down. More than once my bus broke down. Or you get stuck in a bus lane in the Lincoln Tunnel where another bus has broken down and there's a stupid rule that the bus can't leave the bus lane. So I missed shifts. I have taken hours to get home. So I do not miss commuting. So it's been so lovely during COVID to A, not have to deal with that, and B, to have the time and space to be in our house. If COVID hadn't happened, I don't know how much I would have been able to enjoy my house.
No, absolutely. And it just gives you the time to feel it and put things in its right spot. So you've actually had time to set it up properly.
That's exactly right.
No, that would be an amazing feeling. So since COVID-19 and its restrictions started in March, what do you miss doing that you can't do right now?
I miss going out to coffee with my friends.
Yep.
And I miss walking around Manhattan. I really miss the city. For all its messy, grimy, complicated, troublesome aspects, of which there are plenty, I know you know this, there's something about Manhattan that it's such a special place. And I miss it.
Yeah. New York.
We were watching the Thanksgiving parade this morning and it broke my heart.
Oh, yes. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Okay, I totally forgot. Yes, of course, it's Black Friday, it's Thanksgiving, and it was Turkey Day on Animal Crossing yesterday. It's all making sense.
What I loved the Thanksgiving parade today for the first time, they invited people from different Indigenous tribes from the New York area to do it's not called a welcome to country, that's Australian. It was a acknowledgement of land. Was what they called it. And it was really beautiful. And I wish that they could have that at every event.
Yeah, no, I understand the significance of that. I think that's a really, really lovely touch. Wow, okay. So what skill do you feel that you have improved at during this time?
I have been able to, I started my podcast. And my husband has two podcasts. One's called Embrace the Void and the other one is called Philosophers in Space. And I have taken over editing of all three of those podcasts.
Wow.
And it was something I had done a little bit before lockdown. Well, actually, like years ago when I was still in Australia. And I hadn't done it for a long time. And when I first had a podcast when I was in Australia, you had to sort of know how to code to put it onto iTunes. And now it's a whole business, like the hosting sites, and it's less complicated, but the demands are higher, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Because you have to have all these production values, and it just, you used to just record on your iPhone and, or it didn't even have an iPhone back then. You just use the voice thingy, your voice recording on your phone. Yeah. And so it's been really challenging but fun to learn how to edit.
Yeah, I know. I'm sitting here and editing these podcasts and, there's the loudness meters and all of these things. And you go, okay, sure, right, I'll match them. Yeah. So I appreciate how challenging that is. You've now become an editor and we might have to have a chat off air about me booking you to edit this podcast, should you want some more work. But on the flip side, what have you discovered that you are absolutely rubbish at?
This is something that I have learnt increasingly since I got sick a few years ago with leukemia, is that and it's funny relearning it during lockdown, that I'm not good at not being busy. I hate being still.
Yeah.
I love having lots of projects. I love having lots to do. I love being accountable in lots of different places. So my challenge is to not overbook myself because I don't like having empty spaces in the calendar. And you have to have empty spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You need to sleep and eat.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not good at not being busy. I don't like having time off.
Yeah, the brain goes a little bit mushy if it's not thinking about doing something or creating the next amazing musical or learning scripts or something along those lines.
Exactly.
Yep, I get that too. I think my brain's gone a little bit mushy during lockdown, but oh well, maybe it's me getting old. So, what are you really grateful for during this time? Because everything's changed. People's priorities have changed. What has it made you realize that you are grateful for?
I am super grateful for my husband, Aaron. He has been the perfect person to be shut away with.
Yep.
He's so patient and kind and loving, and he's an amazing cook. And I couldn't ask for a better person to be trapped with.
Wow.
And I'm thankful for internet access. I've been thinking a lot, and I thought this during my convalescence too. I don't know how people recovered, or like I've thought about the people during the Black Plague in medieval times, or the Renaissance. How did they cope with not being able to reach the outside world? Like podcasts and Zoom and social media, for all their ills, I'm connected with people, even though I haven't seen people physically in months.
Yep.
I'm more connected than ever because we have time to be connected. And so I don't know how people did this without the internet.
No, I've had a very similar thought when we were first in lockdown in Sydney, and I thought, I can't go anywhere and I'm stuck at home. And I wondered if this is what it was like being in a Jane Austen novel, being a woman in a Jane Austen novel, just sitting at home waiting for a husband to rock up, and all you can do is play the piano and do a little bit of sewing. And it's like, okay, well, I did that yesterday. What is there to do today? Oh, the same thing. So, can you tell me something that you don't want the rest of the world to know that you may have geeked out at during lockdown? And examples of this is binge watching a series in a whole day, or playing computer games, or so I've been told, eating a whole packet of Tim Tams in under 3.5 minutes.
Is that a challenge?
Challenge.
Oh, but you know what? I will answer your question, but something I have really missed this year, which it's funny, I don't often get homesick. And when the borders close and we become not allowed to travel, and Americans certainly aren't going anywhere anytime soon, I suddenly have this desperate craving for Arnott's biscuits.
Yes.
What I would give for a Kingston.
Oh, I might have some upstairs. I'll eat one for you and share the experience.
Oh, thank you.
Because I'm generous like that.
I really appreciate it. If you could just describe it in great detail.
Absolutely. The crunchiness and the coconut with the kind of chocolate bit in the middle. Yeah. For those of you who are not Australian, Arnott's Biscuits is an Australian staple. They make the most amazing range of biscuits, and Tim Tams is their most famous brand. Kingston's come a very, very close second. But my personal favourite is, just for the plain ones, is the Scotch finger biscuits.
Oh, yum. With a cup of tea?
Yes. Dunk it into the tea. Dunk it in once, bite it off, or snap it in half and dunk it in. And, right.
See, we can get Tim Tams here, but we can't get Arnott's. And I did a hunt, and the pricing there's a company that exports Australian foodstuffs to the US. The shipping was so outrageous, and it's a minimum of like $300 order. I'm not buying $300 worth of biscuits.
Well, you could.
Not happening.
You could.
I could.
Yeah.
I'm not going to.
Seriously, Amazon doesn't have it on. I thought Amazon had everything. Really? Wow.
No. Well, and if maybe they did, but it's like $100 for a packet of biscuits. Like, it's outrageous
Wow.
But my guilty pleasure during lockdown has been, without a doubt, the Great British Bake Off.
Ah, yes. Yes.
Oh, I think I've got two or three seasons out of the 9 that or what are we at, 11 that we haven't watched because they're not available on Netflix. I'm dreading the end of them because what are we going to watch next?
I don't know. Are you going to kind of maybe do some baking and record it? And, you could be the Great American Australian Bake Off in New Jersey?
I don't have the skill that those people have.
I know. It's intimidating, isn't it?
It's amazing.
It's
yeah.
I can make a piece of toast with Vegemite. That's my claim to fame. So, okay, the Great British Bake Off. That is a fantastic series to watch. So that's what you've binged out on. I love it. And, the good thing about watching that is that also you can watch and look at all these lovely sweet things, but it doesn't put on any pounds on the waist. Pa-ching!
That would seem to indicate that I'm not binge eating while watching.
Oh, now the embarrassment is coming out right now. I see.
You can't watch it and not eat. It's cruel to your body to do that.
Yeah, right. You might have a fair point there. So, a very technical fair point there. My next question is, as you're such a famous performer, editor of podcasts, a soap opera has contacted you and offered you a lead acting role. What type of character are you hoping that they're going to write for you, considering soap operas are just a little bit more dramatic than real life?
I have a beautiful pair of fairy wings, and I'm quite enamored with dressing up as a fairy and frolicking about the woods. So I would love to be a singing fairy that pops up and sings at people and makes things better or worse. Either's fine. Just I want to be a singing fairy.
I so love that. It's really funny. A lot of my friends, when I've asked them this question, go, I don't watch soap operas because, they're a little bit ridiculous. And you go, yes, but, you need drama because getting up, having a cup of tea and going to bed is actually quite boring drama. But I went, think of Shakespeare and think of A Midsummer Night's Dream and the ridiculousness of the plot. There are fairies in a forest and there is magic. That's ridiculous.
Yes,
but they all bought it because it was entertaining and it's dramatic. And that's all a soap opera is doing, just not in a Shakespearean way.
That's right. And then there's like Jane the Virgin, which didn't have supernatural, but it had that magical realism element to it. Yes. Although Jane the Virgin's not a soap opera, but it's like a take on Spanish soap operas.
Yeah, it's a novella. So yes, I love that TV show. And there's a slight sense of ridiculousness in it, which makes it funny, dramatic, and engaging.
That's right. Yeah. So please cast me as a singing fairy.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll speak to Oberon and to Tanya, and we'll see what we can do for you. Well, Louisa, sadly, that's the end of the questions. But just before we conclude the interview, as you've watched a lot of film musicals, just like Mary Poppins, if you could click your fingers and fall into a show, and of course be the leading lady of one of the shows you've just watched, which one would it be and why?
Oh, that's a good question.
Thank you.
This hasn't been. I would love to be Mary Poppins. That's one of my dream roles.
Okay.
Although I'm not a soprano, so I'd need to figure out how to get that top C.
Yes.
But Mary Poppins hasn't been filmed. Of shows that have been filmed, that's a really good question. Oh, I know. One of my favorites, Daddy Longlegs. It was the second off-Broadway. It was the first off-Broadway show to be filmed live and to be broadcast online. And it is just a charming two-hander musical. And Jerusha is this fabulous, sweet, bookish human, and the music is gorgeous. And I would love to click my heels and fall into that show.
Wow. Okay. So we've just mentioned that you have been watching a lot of filmed musicals. You've also got a podcast about it. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So it's part of my website, filmedlivemusicals.com.
Mm-hmm.
And as you mentioned earlier, it is a site that is dedicated to cataloging all the stage musicals that have been legally filmed and publicly distributed. So it doesn't include bootlegs, and it doesn't include anything at the Theatre and Film and Tape Archive at the New York Public Library, because that is for archival purposes, and you can only access it if you have a valid reason for research. And so my goal with Filmed Live Musicals is to create kind of like a wiki or a IMBD for stage musicals. And I started the podcast in July, and I've been interviewing industry folks like Tony nominee Brenda Braxton and composer Paul Gordon, actor David Colston Corris, and dancer Lena Wolf, and associate choreographer Barry Busby. I've got 10 episodes out now, and we talk about how the shows were filmed, why they were filmed, what it took for the shows to be filmed, and people's opinions on filming theatre. There's been a big resistance to filming theatre, particularly in the Broadway community, and I hope that this is a little part of legitimizing this amazing art form, which I'm obsessed with the question, what should we call it? Because it's not exactly theater and it's not exactly film, it's something in between. So what should we call a filmed live musical? For now, that's what I'm calling it. But I hope, my dream is that I will come up with the term that describes this thing that I'm watching all the time. And that has been so important during lockdown, like the National Theatre and the Met, and lots of theatre companies around the world are putting work online in a way that hasn't happened before.
Absolutely.
And during lockdown, people have been watching them. Millions of people have been watching them.
I have to admit, sitting at home in the lounge room in Sydney and being able to go to the National Theatre just like I would if I was living back in London is amazing. And the even better thing is that I don't have to pay £8.50 for a glass of wine in the theatre bar beforehand.
You can watch it in your pajamas.
I know. I don't want to say that out loud, but I may have. Do you have any recorded shows that are coming up that you're going to binge watch over the holidays? Like any musicals that you can go, I think this is amazing. Please go and watch this.
I have tickets to the last 5 years that's at Southwark Playhouse. That's over the weekend.
Yes.
I'm really looking forward to that.
My friend Katie Lipson produced that.
Oh, amazing. Small world. So I'm very excited for that. I'm just looking at my calendar. I'm trying to remember what I have coming up. I was meant to have Rent, and that got cancelled because it's geo-blocked. So I got a refund. I was very sad about that. And the Irish Repertory Theatre in New York are doing Meet Me in St. Louis.
Wow. Yep.
Which I'm really looking forward to. And the Broadway production Jagged Little Pill are doing a live concert in mid-December, which I'm also looking forward to.
Yeah, right. Okay, wow.
And like you say, it will never replace the live experience, but it is the next best thing.
I think it's really, really lovely that the National Theatre and a lot of these companies put their stuff online for free. But as you know, there is a lot of people that work on these shows and they need to be paid. So that is why people are asking for you to buy a ticket. It's not that they're trying to make extra money. It's they are trying to pay people and keep people in the arts employed during these times.
Absolutely. And the cost of putting on the streams is not cheap. I don't think people understand what it takes to put on a high quality live stream, the technology, the bandwidth that you need, the cameras. It costs a lot of money, and someone has to pay for it.
And then you need the crew to operate it.
That's absolutely the crew, the cast and crew, the actors, the costumers, the set people. There's hundreds of, you see maybe 10, 15 people on stage, and for every one of those people, there's 100 people behind the scenes that have to do work and need to put food on their tables and pay their rent and all of that.
Absolutely. Now, look, if you would like to follow Louisa on social media, She's on Twitter and Instagram at Luisa Lyons. That is LuisaLyons. And also Filmed Live Musicals is on Twitter at Filmed Live MT. Did I get that right?
That's absolutely right. Thank you.
Amazing. And all links will be listed in the show's description. So, Luisa, I love listening to your podcast. I subscribe. I am very, very entertained. It's really interesting to hear a North American perspective, especially with the smaller theatre companies.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'm having so much fun chatting with people and learning about what people are doing during all of this.
You can find all of Luisa's podcasts and links to legally filmed musicals on her website, www.filmedlivemusicals.com. So, Luisa, thank you so much for joining us here on the Lockdown Hotline Sessions.
Thank you so much, Dan. This was wonderful.
Not a problem. So as we come to the end of another episode of the Lockdown Hotline Sessions, my name is Danielle Lonnon, and you can find me on all the socials at DameDivaDan. Well, until next time, thank you so much for listening. Stay safe and be kind. Ciao. This episode of the Lockdown Hotline Sessions was recorded and produced in Sydney in November 2020.